Hello everyone, tonight we are perched high on a lonely cliff waiting for a storm that hasn't quite arrived yet. The ocean below is restless, spitting foam and secrets into the wind. Somewhere out there the pressure is falling, the clouds are thickening, and 1,000 miles of atmosphere are about to buckle. And just in front of you, right on the edge of the rock, a creature unfurls its wings not to fly but to dance. You're watching a seabird the size of a motorcycle. Its beak is sharp enough to gouge a tree. Its feathers shine like wet obsidian, and its legs move like it remembers something older than evolution. It's not dancing for you. It never was. You probably won't survive what's coming. Let's be honest. You're a soft bipedal mammal with sunburn and a bad knee. If this were 10,000 years ago, you'd already be holding onto driftwood and praying to whatever coastal god accepts late converts. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you are and what time it is. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You crouch behind a slab of blackened stone as the first giant seabird lumbers into view. It lands without grace, feet slapping hard against the wet rock, scattering smaller gulls like dust. Another joins it, then another, and another, until the sky is streaked with wings. These aren't the dainty flocks of postcard pelicans or vacation cormorants. These are Pelagornithids, extinct giants with bony ridges on their beaks and wingspans stretching 6 meters across. Picture a hang glider with a vendetta. They don't chirp, they don't sing, they don't look at you. Instead, they begin. One foot steps out, the other follows. Their wings tilt, necks extend and retract in looping pendulum arcs. There's no music, but you feel like there should be. A slow, deliberate rhythm pulses through their bones, into the stone, up your spine. It's unsettling how synchronized they are, not in perfect unison, but as if they all remember the same storm, the same shape of wind, the same ancient danger. Wind slithers across your ankles. Somewhere behind you, thunder speaks for the first time tonight, low and lazy, like it's just waking up. You glance up. The sky's still bright enough to see, but every color is wrong. The clouds are the sickly green of old bruises. You squint, but there's no telling whether the storm is 30 minutes away or 30 seconds. Historians still debate whether these pre-storm gatherings were mating displays, territory rituals, or weather anticipation. You don't feel like any of those apply. The seabirds aren't flaunting, they aren't aggressive, they look like they're remembering something. Like they've all agreed to rehearse an evacuation that hasn't been officially announced yet. One of the seabirds steps closer to the cliff's edge, raises both wings like a curtain call, and twists. The others follow. You realize they're dancing on the wind, not just on the rock. Their wings catch gusts and lean into invisible pressure like blind dancers trusting an unseen partner. No feathers ruffle, no feet slip, and you're standing there barefoot on stone slick with seabird waste and sea spray, watching this weird, ominous ballet unfold and thinking, this might be the most graceful panic attack in the animal kingdom. Fact check. Some paleontologists believe Pelagornithids had sensory systems in their skulls capable of detecting barometric pressure shifts. Basically, they might have been walking weather stations with wings. If you had feathers that could tingle like a barometer, wouldn't you dance too? A smaller seabird tries to join the line, but it's pushed aside. Not violently, just deliberately. It waits. It watches. It adjusts its footing. When it finally tries again, the others make room barely. This isn't a free-for-all. It's a ritual with rules you'll never be able to understand. You edge forward. The seabirds don't flinch. They don't acknowledge you at all, in fact. You're less than a shadow, more like a breeze. One wrong move, though, and they'll leave. Not fly, not flee, just stop. Like the power goes out in the middle of a play. An odd fact. The bones of Pelagornithids are full of tiny holes, pneumatized, they call it. Makes them lighter. but it also means that their skeletons whistle when wind moves through the cracks. So yes, it's possible their bones made music as they danced. Wind chimes with a wingspan. A sudden gust hits your face, cold and wet and stinging with salt. The birds freeze for a moment, wings half raised, necks halfway down. Then, as if on cue, they shift position. The whole dance turns 90 degrees clockwise, just like that. You blink. Are they responding to the wind, to each other, to something deeper? Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You forgot to silence it. One of the birds closest to you cocks its head. For a half second, you meet its eye, a hard black bead of fossilized intelligence, and you swear it says, "Turn that off." You do. The sky gets darker, the wind gets louder. The sea grows teeth, and still they dance. One bird opens its wings wide and slowly lowers itself into a bow, as if surrendering to the horizon. The others follow. The bow spreads outward in a slow ripple, like the birds are saluting something just over the water. You don't see anything. But then again, you're the species that builds cities in flood zones and names storms like they're old friends. The birds fold their wings. They crouch, still, waiting, listening. And now the real storm begins to speak. The first raindrop doesn't fall, it slaps. Right between your shoulder blades, a warning shot. The kind of cold that makes your heart hiccup. And just like that, the sky unzips. You shield your eyes with one hand, the other, pressed against the slick rock to keep from tumbling down the cliffs. The seabirds don't move. Their rooted wings spread slightly, beaks tilted upward, letting the downpour soak through. You'd think feathers would repel water, but they don't, not completely. These birds absorb the storm as if taking its weight makes them part of it. Their wings stretched wide against the mounting gale boom with each gust. It's not a flap or a beat, it's resonance. Each massive limb becomes a sail. When the wind hits them just right, a deep, cavernous hum escapes, echoing along the cliffside. It sounds like the ocean exhaling through a church organ. You want to record it, but you can't move. You're wet, not damp, not soggy, soaked. The rain feels alive, crawling under your clothes like it's got business with your skin. And the wind. The wind is angry that cliffs even exist. But the birds hold steady. It's hard not to anthropomorphize them. You want to believe they're communing with the storm, having some prehistoric tea with Poseidon. But what you're watching is probably much simpler. These birds are calibrating, aligning their bodies with the shifting pressure, the force of the wind, the sudden crackle of static in the air. Fact-time large seabirds like the extinct Argentavis and Pelagornithids likely used thermals and ocean gusts to glide across continents with almost no energy output. But they couldn't create wind. They had to read it. So maybe, just maybe, this dancing is a kind of audition. If the wind likes them, they get to survive. You shift your position slightly and notice something odd. The rain doesn't hit the birds the same way it hits you. Their feathers are shaped to channel water down in tight rivulets like living thatched roofs. The result? Every time a drop lands, it slides in predictable grooves, echoing down their wings with a soft tapping sound. It takes you a moment to realize what it sounds like. A drumline. 100 percussive taps playing over hollow bone. And they move again. Not a full reset, just a single step. One massive talon rotates outward, scraping across the rock. Then another bird mirrors the motion. Then a third. You swear they're turning to face the wind more directly. It's not random, it's performance with purpose. Historians still debate whether these seabirds were capable of vocalizing in the way songbirds do. Some argue they cooed low frequencies only audible in close range. Others think they communicated entirely through posture and wind reaction, like semaphore flags with feathers. One bird lifts its foot mid-pose and holds it there motionless as the wind howls against its body. You can see the tension ripple through its leg muscles. It's measuring, waiting for the exact moment when balance tips from resistance to ride. Odd fact. In certain parts of the modern world, surfers have reported watching albatrosses fly backward into storms, literally reversing direction against the current, only to slingshot out again minutes later with barely a feather out of place. Sometimes the best way forward is backward. Go figure. You glance behind you. The coastal path you took to get here is gone. Not eroded, not flooded, just gone behind a shimmering curtain of storm. For a hot second you think, cool, I live here now. Another thunderclap rolls in. This one cracks sideways, dragging light across the horizon like a flashlight in a cave. And the birds answer not with sound, but with motion. A new ripple moves through the group. Heads dip. Wings extend to their full width. You flinch, waiting for takeoff, but they don't fly. They lean. Every single seabird leans forward against the wind wings, trembling. It looks like worship or protest, maybe both. There's something ancient about how they do it. Not desperate, not panicked, just practiced. As if they've done this for millions of years and every new storm is a test they already studied for. You want to ask them something, anything, but all you manage is a sneeze which comes out more like a drowned hiccup. One of the birds flicks a glance your way. Just one. Like it's annoyed you're here, breaking the rhythm. And then it lifts both wings and bellows. You didn't know seabirds could bellow. It's not a caw. It's not a squawk. It's a roar. A hollow, deep-throated trumpet that rattles in your chest. You feel like you've just been warned about something only the wind understands. The rest join in, one by one. Not overlapping, each call spaced perfectly between the last like a signal relay system stretching across time. The hum of wind through feathers, the hiss of rain on stone, the thunder overhead, all of it vanishes beneath this avian chorus of judgment. Your ears ring. Your breath catches. You crouch, lower hands over your ears. Still not enough. And then silence. Just like that, the calls end. The birds freeze, as if someone pressed pause on a very serious documentary. No one moves, not even you. Seconds pass, then minutes. The rain lightens, turns to mist. The thunder wanders off to threaten someone else. The wind calms, but only a little. Enough for your teeth to unclench. And finally, the lead bird folds its wings. The others mimic. One by one, the great dark sails collapse. A slow-motion standing ovation. Then they begin to walk in a new direction. This time along the ridge, heads, low backs hunched like monks in retreat. You're shaking, not from cold, not from fear, just from awe. That sound, those wings will follow you forever. The rain stops like someone pulled a curtain closed. Not faded, not tapered, just done. All that remains is the hiss of runoff slipping down the cliff face and the slow, sullen exhale of waves still recovering from their tantrum. The birds are already moving. You follow them, not because you know where they're going, but because doing anything else would feel disrespectful. Besides, the path behind you is still blurred by fog, and frankly, you've committed to the whole haunted coastal witness vibe. Might as well lean in. The seabirds walk in single file along a narrow ledge, wings half-tucked, necks, low feet dragging slightly. It looks funereal. They're not fleeing. They're not even seeking shelter. They're heading towards something, and whatever it is, they've walked this path 1,000 times before. You slip a few times, almost eat rock, and definitely twist something in your hip. Meanwhile, a bird the size of a dining table glides over the same terrain like it's a polished ballroom. Rude. Eventually, the trail opens into a natural stone terrace high above the surf. You pause at the edge, breath caught in your throat. Etched into the basalt in great looping arcs and spirals are claw marks, dozens, maybe hundreds of them. Not fresh, not recent, old. Older than anything you've ever seen that still feels alive. Some are shallow, some deep enough to bury your thumb in. All of them follow the same directional pattern, long dragging sweeps in a loose spiral. You realize the seabirds have danced here before, maybe for centuries, maybe millennia. You kneel, fingertips brushing the carved rock. It's not just the claws that left these marks, it's the weight, the repetition. Over time, the ritual carved itself into the world. You wonder, is this what history really is? Not records, not scrolls, but grooves left behind by those who moved with purpose. Fact, in some coastal cliff systems, geologists have found what they originally believed were glacial striations only to later realize they were scrape marks from repeated animal traffic. Fossilized evidence of habit. The Earth remembers, even if we don't. You rise to your feet and watch as the seabirds move into position. They're not scattered, they don't loiter. They assemble. Each bird steps precisely into a space, not marked by anything visible to you, but clearly significant to them. The spiral is reborn in flesh and feathers. At its center stands the largest among them, taller than a grown man, beak-chipped and scarred, eyes half closed like it's dreaming of thunder. The dance begins again, not the same as before. Slower now, more measured, like a postlude. One step forward, a pause, a tilt of the head, a full body sway. Then the next bird follows and the spiral begins to turn, not with feet, but with motion. You don't know how long you stand there watching. Long enough for the mist to settle. Long enough for your clothes to begin drying in the wind. Long enough for the rhythm to sink into your breathing. And then you notice something else. Along the outer edges of the terrace, the stone dips in strange ways, bowls worn smooth channels where runoff has been redirected. At first, you assume erosion, but then you spot patterns, alignment. These are not natural bowls. They're footprints, ancient ones. Gigantic three-toed imprints from birds long dead, petrified in place. Not fossilized in mud, but etched into the very rock from repeated pressure. You crouch beside one, fitting your hand inside. It disappears entirely. This is a graveyard of dancers. Historians still debate whether sites like this were seasonal gathering points or permanent display grounds. Some believe they were nesting sites. Others argue they were more symbolic ritual platforms for communal behavior. But whatever their purpose, the marks suggest return. Over and over. Odd fact, seabirds today will sometimes return to nesting spots so faithfully that entire islands must be preserved simply to protect their generational memory. Even after environmental change, even after trauma like oil spills or volcanic eruptions, some birds return as if tethered by invisible thread. You're struck by the weight of continuity. These seabirds, these enormous ancient dancers, have passed down a choreography that transcends abushis. You're not even sure the dancers you're watching now are Pelagornithids. Maybe they're a newer cousin. Maybe they're echoes, but the movements match the grooves. That's enough. Then you hear it, a low vibration, subtle, like a distant truck on a rural road. But there are no roads here, no trucks. The seabirds don't react. They resonate. Their chests seem to catch the frequency. Wings twitch slightly in rhythm. You place your hand against the stone. It hums. Beneath the terrace, something shifts. A deep tectonic breath. An old landslide. An underwater quake. You don't know, but the seabirds do. One by one, they pivot. The spiral breaks. The birds flow toward the cliff edge again, not running, not fleeing, just migrating. The movement is seamless. A reset. A page turned. You watch them pass, each clawed foot settling briefly into a print older than fire. And as the last one leaves the terrace, you see something behind it, a single feather, long and striped, caught between two stone ridges. You pluck it free. It's soaked but intact. The pattern is strange, almost like lightning. You tuck it behind your ear, because why not? You've already followed a storm ballet off a cliff. May as well accessorize. You glance once more at the carvings in the stone, the prints in the terrace, the spiral unwinding itself into the air. You think they'll be back. They always are. The air thickens again. You feel it first in your lungs like trying to breathe through warm syrup, and then in your skin where the humidity sticks like film. It's the kind of atmosphere that tells you politely, but with teeth, don't run too far unless you want to drown in your own sweat. The birds know. You can tell. Their feathers, once fanned wide in ritual and rhythm, now stiffen. Not from cold, there's none of that, but from pressure. It's subtle at first. One bird shuffles its wings and pauses. Another fluffs its chest and flattens down. Then, as if responding to an unseen signal, the entire flock begins preening in short, agitated bursts. You crouch beside a rock and run your hand along your arm. Goosebumps. But it's not fear, it's pressure. The storm may have passed, but the atmosphere isn't finished. It's coiling again, building something new. Fact check. Birds especially. Seabirds are highly sensitive to barometric changes. Their inner ears contain specialized structures that allow them to detect subtle shifts in atmospheric pressure, a biological altimeter, if you like. In some species, these shifts trigger automatic behavior migrations, mating dances, or sudden silence. And right now, the birds are recalibrating. Their feathers are more than decoration, more than insulation. They're instruments. Each plume is a weather vane reacting to the invisible churn in the air. You watch as a juvenile seabird lowers its head and shudders, not from fear, from feedback. You lean forward. Your shirt is clinging to your back, damp from the lingering mist. But you're locked in now, there's no going back to dry socks and denial. One of the adult seabirds walks past you. It moves like a bishop, dignified, deliberate, unconcerned with your small human crisis. Its wings twitch slightly, with each step responding to pockets of shifting wind that you can't even feel. And then quite suddenly the dance begins again. Not with all of them. Just three at first, young lean feathers half-mottled with age. They spread out from the group and form a loose triangle on the cliffside, each facing a different direction. They tilt forward, heads low, tails out, and they tremble. It's not fear, it's not performance, it's anticipation. The rest of the flock remains still watching. You'd call it a test if it didn't feel so rehearsed. The three dancers begin to sway not side to side but front to back, following some internal metronome tied to pressure systems you'll never sense. You don't breathe. And then, like a door opening, the first dancer rears back and snaps its wings outwards. The sound is a sharp cracking boom like someone splitting bamboo in a cavern. The pressure shift pushes against your chest like a silent bass drop. You stagger back. The other two birds follow instantly. A burst of wind, a whip of feathers, and then it stops. Historians still debate whether birds ever evolved specific rituals for pressure response, or if this is all coincidence mixed with instinct. One theory suggests certain extinct seabirds could literally feel storms days in advance through feather shaft sensitivity. Another proposes that what we call dancing is just the body's response to internal barometric feedback. You look up. The sky above is still bruised, but no new clouds have formed. The sea, oddly enough, has gone glassy, like it's holding its breath. You glance back at the dancers. They're now joined by a fourth and a fifth. The spiral reforms not in defiance of the pressure, but because of it. Odd fact, feathers contain nerves. Not just for pain or growth, but for environmental sensing. In some birds, the feather follicles are tuned to react to airflow and vibration, creating a kind of passive sonar system that lets them read the air the way you read facial expressions. So yes, that bird shaking out its wings like a wet umbrella isn't being dramatic, it's running diagnostics. You sit down mostly because your knees are starting to betray you, but also because something about this moment demands stillness. The seabirds shift again. The spiral bends slightly into an oval, accommodating a group of juveniles now inching their way into the outer edge. One chick trips, flailing its wings, and lands flat on its chest. The others pause. Not to scold, not to coddle, just to wait. The chick gets up, shakes off the embarrassment, tries again. You smile, not because it's cute, but because you've tripped like that before and no one waited. The birds continue. Wings flared slightly. They move in increments, not quite steps, not quite glides. Their feathers rise and fall like breath. You can hear the soft scraping of claws on stone, the whisper of feathers adjusting the low moan of wind curling through distant sea caves. And then, in the corner of your eye, You see a cluster of seaweed shift in a direction the wind isn't blowing. You frown, stand up, move closer to the ledge. Below, the tide has reversed. It's not supposed to. Not now. The lunar cycle's off. You checked, but the current is moving inland, curling in patterns that look eerily similar to the spiral above. It hits you the birds aren't responding to the pressure. They're mirroring it, embodying it, not just dancers-interpreters, translators of invisible violence. You whisper to no one? What are you warning us about? The wind picks up again, not strong, not loud, but persistent, a whisper that grows teeth. The birds stop mid-step, heads turn toward the sea. All of them. And you know without knowing why that something's coming. Something that doesn't speak with thunder but with weight. It starts with hesitation. Not yours, the ocean's. You notice it in the space between waves. They don't crash anymore, they wait. Each swell creeps forward, then pulls back like it's rethinking its approach. Like something underneath is breathing in. The seabirds freeze again, and this time it's different. No choreography, no elegant arcs or spirals, just absolute stillness. Not a twitch, not a blink. You've never seen such enormous creatures vanish into silence without leaving. They don't look afraid, they look obedient, and you feel it too. That strange pressure under your ribs. A quiet compression like standing at the top of a stairwell and knowing someone else is in the house. You look down. The tide is holding its breath. Fact check. Some ancient coastal cultures noted that just before massive oceanic disturbances, tsunamis, underwater landslides, seismic tremors, the shoreline behaves strangely. The tide pauses. Currents twist. Even birds go silent. These moments were often seen as omens, or divine interventions, or both. Back on the cliff, the flock begins to move again, but this time the rhythm is off. No longer the smooth, measured steps of a ritual. Their movements stutter. Legs tremble slightly. They shift too quickly like fast-forwarded film. The spiral loses cohesion. Birds turn without pattern, without cue. One flaps its wings, suddenly knocking into the next. There's no aggression, but it's not graceful either. It feels like a glitch. You scan the terrace for something, anything that might explain the disruption. The wind is steady, not fierce. The pressure is heavy, yes, but stable. No thunder, no lightning, no rain. And yet the birds are agitated. Then it hits you. The tide's rhythm is off too. The waves are forming at irregular intervals. Short, long, short again. The natural tide rhythm is like a lullaby, but this is more like a skipping record. You kneel and press your palm against the stone terrace again. It's warm, not sun-warmed, internally warm. A low, throbbing heat you hadn't noticed until now. The rock pulses once beneath your skin, just once, then stops. One of the larger birds throws its head back and lets out a high, ragged cry. Not the bellow you heard before. This is raw, a warning. The rest follow not in sequence but in layers, overlapping cries and mismatched keys like a choir with a broken conductor. The sound rattles in your skull. The youngest birds huddle in the outer ring, lowering themselves to the stone. You feel the vibration again, this time deeper, beneath you. Historians still debate whether ancient seabird behavior was connected to seismic events. Some believe the birds could detect micro-tremors or magnetic disturbances before humans ever noticed. Others think the timing was coincidence rituals mistaken for reaction. But you're here, and coincidence feels like a weak theory. Odd fact. There are modern seabirds like shearwaters that have been documented abandoning breeding grounds days before earthquakes with no meteorological explanation. They vanish inland without visible cause and often return weeks later as if nothing happened. The flock before you isn't abandoning anything yet, but they've stopped dancing. One by one they lower their wings, a low crouch, like theater actors between acts, heads tilted, listening. The pressure has changed again. but this time not in the air, in the ground. You stand up slowly, trying not to make sound, though your feet slap wetly against the stone. The seabirds don't acknowledge you. Their eyes are elsewhere, focused toward the sea, then downward. The spiral has broken. Whatever rhythm they were following has been interrupted by something deeper. And then, a sound. Not a roar, not a crack. A low, wide moan, like the earth itself sighing. You turn slowly toward the inland side of the terrace. The trees on the cliff top are trembling. Leaves rustle without wind. Roots shift. Somewhere deep below, something is adjusting itself. You glance at the seabirds, still crouched, still silent. One older bird takes a single step. It's enough to restart the others. They move not with elegance now, but with purpose. The spiral reforms tighter, not artistic, defensive. You watch them cluster inward, beaks lowered, wings half-furled. No one's performing anymore. They're bracing. And then, without warning, the stone beneath your feet jolts. Not a quake exactly, just a single sharp movement like the planet cleared its throat. You stumble. The birds remain steady. You press your hands flat to the stone, trying to listen, not with ears but with skin. There's something building, a low resonance. Pressure beneath pressure. The seabirds begin to shuffle. But now the rhythm has changed again. This new pattern is sharp syncopated. 2 steps, pause, step back, twist. It's not beautiful, it's mathematical. You get the feeling you're watching a code being written with claws. You whisper without realizing it. What is this? They don't answer. Of course they don't. But their movements form a shape, a response. The spiral doesn't grow, it shrinks, contracts, becomes dense. They are forming the eye of their own storm. And then just then the sea answers. A single wave larger than the rest slaps the base of the cliff. Not massive, but different. It doesn't retreat fully, it waits, like it's curious. You look to the sky, still empty, but not for long. The sky isn't dark yet, but it feels like it should be. Everything around you seems to lean into a shadow that hasn't quite arrived. The birds, the cliffs, the trees, even your thoughts. There's a hush now, deep and reluctant, like nature is trying not to breathe too loudly. And the seabirds keep moving, but the rhythm has shifted again. You watch as one younger bird stumbles just a bit. A wing catches the air wrong. The foot lands half an inch off mark and the whole body falters. It's not dramatic, no feathers fly, no panic, but the mistake rings out like a wrong note in a cathedral. The others pause. That's when you realize this isn't a show. This dance isn't meant to be beautiful. It's meant to be remembered, a rehearsal, a drill. The seabirds aren't performing for anyone. They're practicing for something that demands speed, precision, coordination. Not art, not flair, just survival. You take a half step back, avoiding the edge of the groove worn into the terrace. The same groove hundreds of generations of birds have traced. And now this juvenile just slipped on a step that's likely older than its bones. The flock resumes, but the misstep has left a mark not on the stone, but in the choreography. The others adjust. You see wings held a little lower, steps taken a little wider. It's subtle, but you're watching the entire spiral recalculate itself in real time. Evolution isn't just about genetics, apparently. Sometimes it's dance corrections. Fact check. In the modern world, migratory birds engage in what researchers call pre-departure restlessness. It's a period of chaotic, jittery behavior before long flights. But in some species, it includes repeated pacing, coordinated movement, and even synchronized calling. In ancient seabirds, this could have evolved into what we now mistake for performance. The young bird tries again. Same step. This time it lands right, barely. You hear a single note, a low, steady exhale from the spiral's center. One of the elders perhaps acknowledging the correction, or warning the others to stay sharp. You've seen enough rehearsals to know the difference between tired and ready. This is ready. The sky above has gone the color of bruised steel. You blink, and for a moment, you see a faint flicker across the horizon. Not lightning, not yet, just light shifting where it shouldn't be. Like the air itself blinked back, and still the birds move. Their wings are now extensions of the cliff itself, rising and falling with the rhythm of the earth. You find yourself mimicking them unconsciously, your stance widening breath, slowing shoulders, rocking gently. It's contagious. You hear your voice very softly. Okay, I'm listening. Historians still debate whether these behaviors were passed down visually by imitation or coded into behavior by instinct. One school of thought believes ancient birds conducted practice sessions for fledglings. Another insists it's all reflex, like how you flinch before you fall. But this doesn't feel like reflex, this feels like school. Odd fact. In some birds, the ability to recognize and replicate complex movement patterns is linked to memory regions in the brain similar to those used in human speech. So a dance. That's not just motion, that's language. The youngest birds now stand near the outer ring again, having completed their brief solo attempts. None look proud, none preen. There's no applause in this culture. The spiral expands once more, this time deliberately. Each bird turns outward facing the air. Not the sea, not the cliff, the air. It takes you a second to realize why. The wind does back, but not how it was. This time it doesn't scream. It presses, a constant steady force like the tide but from the sky. You lean into it and it feels like someone pushing on your chest, not enough to hurt, just enough to remind you that your bones are optional. The birds respond instantly. Their feathers angle their necks, elongate their wings, adjust into a shallow V shape. No resistance. Full cooperation. The wind rolls through them like they've been waiting for it. And then again the youngest one stumbles. It turns slightly too late. A gust lifts one wing before the other. The bird spins. Not dangerously, just enough to throw it out of sync. The spiral shifts. The dance halts. You don't know how, but you feel their decision. The rehearsal is over. Fact. In many bird colonies, particularly among social species, individual failure during coordinated behavior can lead to exclusion from group activities. Not punishment, just omission. The group must survive. Margin for error. Near zero. But here, no one drives the juvenile away. Instead, one older bird walks to its side. Just one. The spiral adjusts its spacing to allow them both room. They take the step together. Not perfectly, but together. And that somehow feels heavier than any ritual so far. The sky flickers again. This time higher up. Not lightning, still not yet. More like static in a sheet of metal. The seabirds do not look up. They already know. You look toward the sea. That single waiting wave gone. In its place, a silence so large you swear it has volume. You press your hand to the feather behind your ear, suddenly unsure whether you placed it there for style or superstition. The seabirds brace. You mimic them again unconsciously, adjusting your shoulders, leaning forward slightly, arms loose. If this was just a dance, it's done now. This is the part where they fly. They don't take off all at once. You thought they would. That's how it's done in documentaries. Wings unfurl, feet launch, sky fills, majestic. But that's not how it happens here. Here it starts with a whisper. The first bird leans forward, tail low, wings, angle to slice, not lift. It doesn't flap, it tilts. One foot pushes off with the smallest motion you've ever seen from something that size, and suddenly it's airborne, without drama, without noise. It disappears into the mist with surgical precision. The others don't follow immediately. They wait. One beat, two, then the next goes. Then three more. The cadence is irregular, almost shy. You think they're not escaping. They're entering something. You step toward the cliff's edge, water squelching in your shoes, and squint. The sea is flat again, like a pane of lead. No whitecaps, no swells, just the occasional stitch of motion where wind skims the surface. And above it all, silence. Even the waves refuse to speak now. Then another seabird takes off beside you, and this one does flap. Just once. A massive downward sweep that knocks you slightly off balance and leaves a sound behind like the snap of a ship's sail catching wind. You feel it in your sternum. Fact check. Fossil reconstructions of Pelagornithids suggest they were built more for gliding than flapping. Their hollow, ultralight bones and vast wingspans meant they could ride ocean thermals for hours without moving a muscle. But to get into the air, they needed either a sharp drop or a running start with wind. Here they have both. Still not all the birds launch. A few stay behind, lingering at the edge of the spiral. Some are smaller. A few are older, beaks chipped and wings frayed like overused sails. One of them tilts its head skyward, then glances inland. You swear it's counting seconds. And then a noise. Not loud, not close, but unmistakable. A deep electric rumble, like thunder stuck in its throat. It doesn't flash, it pulses. You feel it in your chest before your ears catch it. The air tenses. Historians still debate whether seabirds like these were capable of detecting not just storms, but the atmospheric shift that comes before lightning strikes, a change in static, a drop in charge. Some researchers say yes, pointing to recorded behavior in albatrosses. Others say it's nothing but folklore and overinterpretation. But when the third pulse comes deeper, slower, you stop doubting. And now the spiral breaks completely. The remaining birds move. Fast. No more hesitation, no more instruction. Each footfall is precise. They line up along the cliff's edge like beads on a wire, wings already half raised. One by one they vanish into the wind, disappearing beyond the veil of mist. Odd fact. In ancient myths from Polynesian and South American coastal peoples, giant seabirds were considered messengers of the storm, not prophets, participants. Some legends say they carried warnings from the sky. Others say they caused the storms just by dancing. A gust hits you hard in the side and you stumble again. This time the rock beneath your foot shifts slightly. You freeze. A hairline crack traces a line beneath your toes. Not enough to fall, but enough to say, don't stay here much longer. You glance around. Only one bird remains. It's old. Tall, beak long enough to spear a shark. Wings tattered but functional. Its feathers are soaked but somehow still regal. It doesn't look at you, but it knows you're there. You're sure of it. It takes one step forward, spreads both wings wide, wider than anything you've seen yet, and for a moment it holds there, a silhouette against nothing. Wind tunnels through the terrace, dragging salt and heat and something else, something metallic. Then the bird leaps. No flap, no struggle, it falls like a knife. Gone. You're alone. The wind doesn't leave with them. In fact, it grows stronger now, as if it was waiting for witnesses to vacate before speaking freely. The mist begins to thin, not lift, just pull apart in layers like gauze unraveling. You step forward slowly, cautiously, and peer over the cliff. And there they are, not flying exactly, hovering. A whole fleet of seabirds suspended just above the ocean's surface, wings outstretched, gliding in spirals you can barely track. They don't move fast, they're not fleeing. They're mapping, using the air, reading the invisible language of turbulence, of pressure, ridges of echoes bounced off cold currents below. You don't have to be a scientist to understand it anymore. You feel it in your knees, in your scalp, in your breath. They are preparing for what's next, and they aren't doing it for fun. This is a storm dance, not in ritual, in strategy. The sound comes again, louder now. A deep electric cough in the sky. Still no lightning, still no rain. But you can smell it. Ozone, salt, something else, like rust on hot metal. You imagine the seabirds down there writing storm calculus with their wings, and realize this isn't fear, this is routine. They don't dance for curiosity. They dance because the storm is a creature, and creatures can be negotiated with. You glance at the feather still tucked behind your ear. It's flattened against your skull now, damp and barely holding shape. But it feels right, like a key. Like you're supposed to carry it for what's coming next. You don't know what's coming. Not really. But the seabirds do. They always have. You turn from the cliff edge and find yourself walking inland, though you don't remember deciding to. The air is thick now, not just with moisture, but with something harder to name. It feels like being watched, but by something beneath your feet. The path dips suddenly. You skid a little on loose gravel, catch yourself, and glance up. Ahead lies a narrow opening in the rock face, low and wide like a half-sleeping mouth. It wasn't there before. Or maybe it was and you just weren't ready to see it. You hesitate, then step inside. The shift is immediate. The temperature drops. The sound of the wind vanishes completely, like someone pressed mute on the outside world. The only sound left is the soft plip of distant water and the steady drip from unseen cracks in the ceiling. You shuffle forward, careful hunched hands grazing the damp walls. The cave tightens, then opens suddenly into a cavern so vast your footsteps don't echo, they vanish. You're not alone in here. Bones everywhere, stacked in quiet spirals, laid out in rows. Some so fossilized they've fused into the rock. Others are recent, still sharp-edged and white. You walk softly, not from fear but reverence. You kneel beside one of the nearest clusters. Rib cages like broken baskets. Necks curled back. Wing joints so massive you could thread your arm through them. And they're etched into the thick humerus of one massive wing. You spot something that makes your throat catch. Not carvings, not tool marks, grooves. Thin, straight, evenly spaced. Like a wind chime if the wind played music in reverse. You stand slowly. Fact check. Pneumatized bones. Bones filled with air sacs are not only lighter but capable of carrying sound. In some fossilized seabird remains, archaeologists have found evidence that strong ocean wind passing through these bones creates harmonic resonance. Literally the dead singing when storms pass. You turn toward the wall. There's more. Dozens of wing bones propped vertically against the stone, some leaning together, others arranged in odd parallel formations. You raise a hand gently, place your fingertips against one. It hums, just slightly, but it hums. The pressure outside is increasing again. You feel it through the bones. You wonder, were these seabirds buried here? Or did they choose to come? Did they fly in when their wings couldn't catch the wind anymore? Did they spiral here not to die, but to remember? Odd fact. Certain species of modern seabirds like petrels and frigate birds have been documented, returning to the same remote locations to die, often perishing in small clusters. The reason remains unclear. Some say magnetoreception failure, others call it a mystery of instinct. You take a few more steps. The cavern tilts slightly upward. In the center, a raised stone dais. Around it, more bones. Nestled in arcs. Their positions suggest rest or worship. You mount the steps slowly, unsure if you're trespassing or being invited. At the top, you find something that doesn't belong. A necklace. No, not a necklace. A loop of woven grass and dried seaweed threaded with small shells and feathers. Tiny ones. Modern. Some still iridescent in the cave light. You pick it up. Carefully. It's old, but not fossilized. Someone left this here. Not a seabird. A human. Historians still debate whether early coastal humans interacted directly with seabird colonies or simply observed them from afar. Some cave art suggests mimicry dances possibly used in ritual or early meteorology. Others suggest spiritual imitation, humans copying the spiral for reasons that had nothing to do with science. You glance around the cave and whisper, "Were you watching too?" The silence doesn't answer, but a soft breeze curls through the opening behind you, brushing your cheek. The necklace sways gently in your hand. You tuck it away. You're collecting tokens now, apparently. Outside, the sky grumbles again. Not a roar, a warning cough. Time to go. As you exit the cave, the bones seem to fade behind you, absorbed back into the silence. You glance back once, just to make sure it was real. The entrance is gone. In its place, unbroken rock and moss. as if the earth politely erased the doorway after you pass through. You don't question it, not anymore. You're halfway across the ridge when you hear the first wing beat again, distant, heavy, measured. You look up. They're back. Not all. Just a few at first. Skimming the air in slow spirals, low enough to see, high enough to seem mythic. The same birds, maybe, maybe not. At this point, identity feels irrelevant. They're dancing again, but different now. The pattern is simpler. Fewer spirals, more hovering, like they're waiting for something to finish loading. The wind shifts again, and this time it's not a warning. It's a question. You take a breath, let the pressure settle in your chest. And for the first time since this began, you realize they're not just reacting to storms. They're waiting to decide when to leave, when to fly, when to survive, and when to let go. You don't remember sitting down, but somehow you've ended up with your back against a stone ledge, knees tucked to your chest, eyes locked on the sky. The seabirds drift above, silent again. There's no trace of their earlier urgency, no more booming wings or storm ballet spirals. They've changed rhythm once more. Now, they turn slowly, methodically in wide arcs that loop against the clouds. You watch them float, their wings barely twitching like oil skimming across water. Below them, the sea rolls in lazy hesitation, and above the sky glows with a weird low silver light that can't decide if it's dawn or dusk. The elder birds are out front. You recognize them by their posture, lower necks, wider wingspans. An easy arrogance that says they've done this before. But there's something odd. Their movements are reversed. Literally, you blink, rub your eyes, but it's not your vision. While the younger birds spiral in one direction clockwise, the elders move counterclockwise, a mirrored motion in slow, exact defiance. At first, you think it's disorganized, but the longer you watch, the more intentional it becomes. The sky is now full of loops, counter loops, an elegant conflict of movement. Fact check. Many animals display lateralization favoring one side of the body for actions. But in seabirds, some studies suggest a generational or age-based shift in movement bias. Older individuals in certain species appear to orient against prevailing winds or currents as a learned adaptation. Whether that behavior is instinct or wisdom is still debated. You stand, stretch your aching legs, and walk to the edge of the cliff. Looking up from this angle, you can fully see the two spirals forming in the sky. The younger birds chase the wind. The older ones carve into it, like two languages spoken in the same sentence. You wonder if it's a test. Maybe when a bird reaches a certain age or experience, it reverses direction, not just to challenge the body, but to access a deeper rhythm, to graduate in a way from following to leading. But then one of the oldest birds peels away from the group. It dips low, banking hard, slicing across the younger spiral like a blade through fabric. The shift in wind is immediate. The spiral buckles slightly. One juvenile stutters, flapping clumsily to stay airborne. It recovers quickly, but the effect lingers. This wasn't an accident. The elder didn't disrupt the spiral by mistake, it corrected it. You watch as it circles back, rejoining the counter-spiral, as if nothing happened. The younger birds perhaps unconsciously adjust their pattern. It tightens, aligns, and resumes. Historians still debate whether such behavioral corrections among ancient seabirds were conscious or reactive. Was there leadership, mentorship, or simply pressure? Those who failed to keep rhythm were weeded out by wind and hunger. Odd fact: in certain long-lived birds like parrots and ravens, older individuals have been observed teaching younger ones through mimicry. Not just vocalizations, but problem-solving movement, even food retrieval techniques. Intelligence in feathers isn't rare, it's just unromantic. Back in the sky, the double spiral holds for nearly 5 minutes. Then, one by one, the elder birds break off. Not sharply, just slowly gliding out of formation, drifting westward, away from the cliffs across the open sea. You watch them fade into the edge of the storm that still sleeps beyond the horizon. The juveniles stay. They begin to spiral again, this time all in the same direction. Not out of rebellion, you think, but out of permission. The old ones are gone. The training wheels are off. You sit down again, legs dangling off the cliff ice, fixed skyward. And something about it tugs at your memory. Not anything specific, just a feeling. The way children mimic their grandparents' walks. The way dance teachers step back just before recital night. The way you've always wanted someone to tell you it's okay to move differently. Then you hear it. Not from the sky, from behind you. The faintest flutter. You turn. And there just beyond the brush line, hidden in the shadows of the trees, another bird stands. Not flying, not dancing. Watching. It's smaller than the others, lighter, but clearly old. Its feathers are ragged-colored in dull browns and grays, its beak slightly chipped. It makes no sound. But its head tilts once to the sky, and you follow its gaze. The juveniles have begun to mimic the counter-spiral now. You hadn't noticed. Somewhere in the last few minutes, the direction changed. Not all at once, just slowly, gradually, like they remembered, like they chose to remember. You glance back to the tree line. The watcher is gone. Just a rustling in the leaves, a hollow print in the moss. You sit in stillness as the sky swirls overhead, filled with movement and memory. The birds continue their pattern, riding circles into the wind, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes reversed. Like history being rehearsed across layers of air. Not for show, for resilience. A low groan rolls up from beneath the cliff, the kind of sound you feel before you hear a resonance deep in your teeth. It isn't thunder. It's too slow, too wide. It feels like tectonics, like the continent itself just turned over in its sleep. The seabirds respond instantly. No alarm, no panic, just a collective pause. In midair, wings arrest. Gliders stall. Gravity does its part, but the birds angle their wings and cut downward, settling gently across the terrace once more. It's not a landing, it's a regrouping. You step back as they descend in quiet waves, shoulders hunched, claws scraping gently against the rock like chalk. You know that sound now. You've heard it before. When they dance. But they don't spiral this time. They cluster. Fact check. Some seabirds, particularly those that nest in colonies on unstable coastal cliffs or volcanic islands, have been observed reacting to seismic tremors with sudden changes in grouping behavior. Rather than fleeing, many tighten their formations, possibly using shared body positioning to brace or interpret further movement. One bird hunches low, its wings lifted slightly, beak to stone. Another moves in behind it, copying the posture. And then another. Before long, a dense organic grid forms across the clifftop, dozens of birds pressed together in tight hexagonal patterning like scaled-down tectonic plates. It's beautiful in a tense way, like watching the prelude to an avalanche or a verdict. You crouch near one edge of the formation. The ground beneath your hand feels warm again. The stone pulses softly, not shaking, breathing. And then something very strange happens. The birds begin to sway, not in their elegant spiral style, not in the rigid rhythm of rehearsal, but in something looser, more chaotic. Left, pause, forward, pause, back, back again. You try to find the pattern, but it evades you. It's irregular, like free-form jazz played by claws and feathers. Then it clicks. They're not dancing anymore. They're measuring. You look around. Each bird is stepping slightly differently. Some longer, some shorter, some in circles, some in lines. The overall effect is disorienting, like watching static walk. But it's not random. They're reacting to the stone, to something under the stone. You remember the brief lurch earlier, the heat in the terrace, the shifting wind, and misplaced tide. It's all one system. The seabirds are reading the earth, not with instruments, with feet. Odd fact. Certain bird species have pressure-sensitive nerves in their legs and feet, allowing them to detect subtle shifts in ground stability or vibrations. There's ongoing research into whether this sensitivity is linked to migratory behavior or, in rare cases, to anticipatory movement before earthquakes. You press your palm flat to the stone. It's warm again. But more than that, it's alive. A slow, slow throb, not violent, just aware. You whisper, "Is this fault line dancing?" The birds don't answer, but they keep swaying. And then one bird lifts its head sharply. The others freeze. Seconds later, the ground shifts, not dramatically, not a crack or a collapse, just a slow tilt like the world leaned a little too far to one side and remembered to stop. Dust sifts from a nearby ledge. Water slides differently down a groove, and you realize the seabirds danced not before the tremor but into it. Like synchronized swimmers joining a current they'd long expected, historians still debate whether prehistoric cultures ever used bird behavior to predict natural disasters. There are scattered oral histories from the Andes, from the South Pacific, from the Aleutians that suggest such awareness. But academic consensus, not quite. And yet you're standing here on a trembling cliff surrounded by living seismographs and feathers. They're not surprised. You are. You step back slowly as the dance begins to change again. The birds peel off one by one, returning to the terrace edge, reforming small spirals with tight radii. Not for show, not for rhythm. They're drawing maps of what's to come. You notice the grooves again, the ones carved into the terrace. You thought they were random or historical. But now, as the new spirals etch across the same worn arcs, you realize they are records. The birds have been inscribing fault behavior into this rock for generations, a natural archive. You whisper they've been measuring the Earth's breadth this whole time. One of the seabirds closest to you bobs its head slightly like it heard you, or maybe like it agrees. Odd fact. In parts of coastal Japan, there are ancient stone markers etched with warnings not to build homes below certain elevations left by past generations who survived tsunamis. The markers were often ignored in modern times. You wonder what warnings were left by those without hands to carve them. As the last tremor fades, the birds fall still again. No flapping, no sound, just a kind of quiet knowing. Then, as if summoned by a whisper in the deep, the wind shifts. Again. But this time it smells different. Drier. Hotter. The sea wind has changed direction, now coming from inland. That shouldn't be possible, not here, not now, but it is. You look up. One of the younger birds lifts off. Its wings beat twice, then lock into a glide. It doesn't circle. It flies straight inland. You watch it vanish over the treetops. Then another follows, and another. They are leaving the coast, not because of the storm, because of the ground. You turn to look behind you toward the mainland, where low hills tremble beneath a gray-blue haze. A memory rises in your chest of the humming bones in the cave, of the shifting tide, of the dance that turned into a code. You stand up. If they're moving inland, you probably should too. But not yet. Not until the last bird leaves. And it hasn't. Not yet. You follow them. There's no conscious choice. No internal monologue. Your feet just move carefully, slowly, as if remembering something your body never told you. The seabirds have already vanished into the canopy, their wing beats muffled by forest and mist. All that remains is their wake, which somehow hangs in the air like steam rising off hot stone. You press inland. The terrain changes almost immediately. The ground softens, turning from ancient rock to mossy dirt, and the light shifts, filtered now through long finger-like branches that drip water onto your shoulders. The wind dies, not slows dies. Even the trees seem to hold their breath here. Ahead, the land dips into a basin. At the center, a clearing filled with long grass, low rocks, and bones. Lots of bones. But these aren't coastal bones. No massive wing fossils, no ocean-scoured skulls. These are inland seabirds. Smaller, stranger. Some are warped, curved as if they died mid-flight. Others are shattered, almost melted at the joints. You crouch near one skeleton that lies belly-up, feet, curled like claws reaching for sky. You murmur, "You shouldn't be here," and they shouldn't. Not this far inland, not this far from the cliffs. Fact check. A paleontological site in South America once revealed seabird remains over 30 kilometers from the coast. The prevailing theory, A sudden environmental shift or panic migration, possibly in response to drought, seismic activity, or ecological collapse. But no consensus ever formed. The site was eventually overgrown. You step carefully between the bones. In the center of the clearing, there's a shallow depression, not a crater, a circle, wide and subtle like the earth was pressed gently by a massive spinning feather. You recognize it instantly, the spiral, but this one's unfinished. It ends abruptly mid-curve like a sentence interrupted. You look up. Surrounding the clearing are trees all bowed slightly inward. The angle isn't dramatic but uniform, as if the forest itself leaned to listen. You whisper, "Did you try to dance here?" The bones answer in silence. Historians still debate whether the inland migration of seabirds was a rare panic event or a misunderstood ritual. Some suggest that ancient bird populations were drawn toward fault lines or heat pulses in the earth, attempting perhaps to anticipate more than just weather. Others dismiss the idea outright. Birds don't prophesy. They flee. You crouch beside one of the largest skeletons. Its beak is half buried in the dirt. The tip has worn to a smooth nub. You brush soil from its eye socket and find something glinting just beneath the bone. It's a shard of shell, tiny, but etched with something. Not letters, not language, but grooves. You run your fingertip across it, up-down curve loop. It's the same pattern they danced. You felt this shape in the stone terrace, seen it, etched into bones, watched it mapped in wind. This is their memory. This is their last attempt. Odd fact. Some birds, particularly those in island ecosystems, have been observed performing behavioral rituals long after the environmental cue has disappeared, dancing where there's no rain, building nests with no mates in sight. Whether it's genetic inertia or hope, no one's certain. You pocket the shell without thinking. It feels wrong to leave it behind, like forgetting someone who whispered a warning and died mid-sentence. Above, the clouds shift again. This time it's not subtle. A sharp wind cuts through the trees, not from the ocean, not from the hills, from beneath. You hear it rustle the canopy first, then the grass at your knees, then your skin as if it's crawling upward out of the earth. And you see them. Not many, just 3. Seabirds alive, gliding silently into the clearing from above, their wings catching no sun, their feathers dulled by mist. They circle once slow, deliberate, and land softly beside the bones. They don't cry. They don't dance. They walk. One by one, they step into the unfinished spiral, exactly into the prints left by ancestors who never made it back. And they finish it. 3 steps, a curve, a pause, then 2 more. They connect the end of the old line with their own bodies, closing the spiral with breath instead of bone. You stand perfectly still. Not out of reverence, though, maybe that too, but because if you move, you'll break something that's taken thousands of years to complete. The birds bow their heads, just once, and then lift into the air again. You watch them disappear over the trees, and for the first time since you arrived, the clearing feels resolved. The bones seem to settle. The grass stops rustling. Even the trees straighten slightly, like tension has been released from the forest's shoulders. You step backward out of the circle, back through the trees, but back toward the cliffs, heart thudding not with fear but with understanding. This was not a mistake. They came inland on purpose, to remember something the sea forgot, to finish something they started long before the waves ever learned how to pull the moon. The air shifts again as you make your way back toward the cliff lighter, now less oppressive. You'd call it a breeze if it didn't feel so intentional, as though the world was exhaling after holding its breath for centuries. The seabirds are gone. Not completely. You catch glimpses between branches, the occasional flash of wing in the canopy, the faint whisper of a feathered body gliding above. But the grand spectacle, the thunderous spirals, the humming stone terrace. It's all quiet now. The earth, for a moment, has gone still. You break through a final curtain of low-hanging vines and freeze. There's a cave ahead, not hidden, not moss-covered. This one is wide open, mouth agape, carved into a red cliff wall that faces the sea like it's daring the ocean to strike. On its walls, paint, faded, smudged, but still alive with color. You step closer gently and look. Figures. Humans. Dozens of them. Some crouched, some with arms raised, others bent at strange angles. It takes a few seconds before you realize they're dancing. They're dancing like the birds, not perfectly. Their arms are too short, their legs too stiff. But the postures are unmistakable: the spread limb stance, the long neck arch, the hunched crouch before takeoff. Even the spiral is here, chalked across the wall in looping, swirling pigment. You stare in awe. Fact check. Archaeological sites along coastal regions of South America and Polynesia have revealed ancient cave art featuring bird-like humanoid figures, often with exaggerated limb positions and postures mimicking flight. Some researchers believe these images are early weather rituals. Others suggest they were spiritual imitations, humans attempting to copy the animals that could outrun the wind. You run your hand gently over one of the painted figures. The pigment smudges slightly, still responsive after all this time. You pause at the face. It isn't human. Not entirely. Elongated. Beaked. It's wearing a mask. Your heart stutters. You step back and scan the cave walls again. Now that you know what to look for, you see it everywhere: masks, headpieces, cloaks. The figures here weren't just watching seabirds, they were becoming them. At the far end of this cave, something glints in the shadows. You walk slowly, the ground soft beneath your feet, careful not to disturb whatever memory lingers here. There it is, a ceremonial platform, flat stone slabs fitted together with prehistoric precision. On it, a headdress. Seaweed and leather, faded and dry, crowned with a ring of black feathers that fan out like a satellite dish. Nearby lies a staff, wooden, bleached by salt, topped with a fossilized beak, sharpened to a point. You kneel. Someone used this, not just once but often. You can see the wear marks in the stone, the scuffs where bare feet danced, the darker stains where knees knelt for too long. The spiral again is present, carved this time, permanent. You sit cross-legged beside the headdress and close your eyes. It comes to you slowly. A scene not imagined but remembered. Humans cloaked in feather and salt, moving in low spirals, mimicking the birds. Not for theater, not for celebration, for warning, for pleading, for understanding. They watched seabirds do what humans could not: feel the weather's breath before it spoke, read the land before it trembled. And so they copied them. Not out of superstition, out of hope. Historians still debate whether early humans developed ritual mimicry as a response to environmental stressors or as part of spiritual ceremony. Some argue that bird dances were attempts to divine coming storms. Others believe they were used to cause rain or to honor the spirits of animals who could predict what humans couldn't. Odd fact: there are uncontacted tribes today who still believe in the storm dance, that movement can shape the sky. Anthropologists record but do not interpret. Sometimes reverence is better than analysis. You open your eyes and look around the cave again. They didn't just imitate the seabird's shape. They recorded their rhythm, the pulse of the wind, the pressure before rain, the tremble in the ground. This cave is a translation, a dictionary of movement written in charcoal and blood and bone. And as you rise to your feet, something about that hits you harder than expected. You're not the first to stand here. You're not the first to wonder if the birds were more than birds. You're not the first to believe the dance meant something. A final gust of wind blows into the cave, lifting dust from the stone. It catches the feathers of the headdress, making them stir faintly. You watch them move, slow, almost shy. And then, stillness. You turn to leave. At the cave's mouth, you pause and glance back one last time. The painted spiral gleams faintly in the filtered light, like it knows you're watching. You nod and step into the world again. Outside, the wind has changed directions once more. But this time it doesn't push. It invites. You descend back toward the coast, the path looser, now scattered with fine gravel and bones of stories you'll never fully piece together. The air has shifted again, less heavy, less wet. The kind of air that comes just before something decides what it's going to become. The cliffs are visible again, distant ridges cut out of blue and gray. You can just make out the edge where the seabirds had danced hours ago. Though time feels unreliable now, everything since the cave has happened in a strange, deliberate blur. There's movement in the sky. Not many birds, just a few. Scattered, restless, wandering spirals without cohesion. You spot two of them banking westward, then doubling back their wings, twitching erratically. One lowers itself near the cliff, touching down awkwardly as though it misjudged the ground. Another lingers, flapping harder than necessary. They look confused, or tired, or both. You approach the ledge again. The stone still hums faintly, though now it feels more like an echo than a pulse. The groove the spiral etched into the terrace is there, but the markings have softened. Rain time or something else. You sit on the same slab as before and squint into the wind. And then you see it. One bird far out over the water, not gliding, flying into the storm, not just toward it, into it. Its wings beat steadily, methodically, almost stubbornly. You can barely make out the glint of its beak, but its silhouette holds shape against the bruised sky. You wait for it to turn back. It doesn't. It disappears into the clouds like it was never there. And you feel it in your chest. They do all this, the dance, the spiral, the tremble, reading the posture, and the wind measuring, and then they still fly into the storm. Why? Fact check. Some seabirds, including frigate birds and shearwaters, are known to fly toward tropical storms rather than away. Scientists believe this is a strategic decision. By flying to the edge of a cyclone and riding the counterwind, they can slingshot around and avoid the worst. Of course, it doesn't always work. You sit in silence, wind threading through your sleeves, watching the horizon darken. You're not sure if that one bird made a mistake or if it knew something the others didn't. Historians still debate whether such behavior is instinctual or calculated. Some argue birds evolved storm-chasing techniques to avoid predators or reach feeding grounds faster. Others claim it's a final act of desperation when grounded options vanish. But you watched them prepare. You watched the rehearsals, the drills, the memory in the bones. And still they go. The cliff beneath you groans, just slightly. Not seismic, just restless. You think of the cave again. The humans who mimicked birds. The ritual dancers who curved their backs and raised their arms to the air, trying not just to understand the storm, but to join it. Maybe that bird wasn't fleeing. Maybe it was finishing the dance. Odd fact. In Maori legend, certain stormbirds were said to sing the cyclone into existence not by voice, but by cutting patterns in the wind with their wings. It wasn't song, it was motion, and the storm responded. You look up. Two more seabirds take flight. They hover, twist. One tries to spiral. It gets partway through, then abandons the pattern. They turn toward the horizon, toward the storm, and hesitate. They don't follow. Not yet. But they're watching, waiting. And you can feel it again, that tug beneath the surface, not in the sea this time, but in the sky. Like the pressure has shifted upward. Like the air itself is being pulled into a new shape. There's no rain, not yet. No thunder, just silence. And then a sound. A low boom from far overhead. Not thunder, a wing beat. You whip your head up, heart catching in your throat. A massive shape coasts across the top edge of the cliffs. Not close, not clear, but wide. Wider than anything you've seen today. Its wings stretch impossibly far, nearly translucent at the edges, and it glides like it owns the very idea of motion. It doesn't spiral. It doesn't pause. It just flies, straight into the same storm. You watch until it vanishes, and you whisper without meaning to. Why do you go? But you already know the answer. Because the ritual is not about avoidance. It's about readiness. All the dancing, all of the spiraling, all the vibrating bones and footstep grooves, all the memories etched into cliff and cave. They don't do it to escape the storm. They do it so when the time comes, they're ready to enter it. Section 14. You don't move for a long time. Not because you're stunned, though you are, but because the moment feels like a held breath. The world around you has flattened into silence again. Even the wind seems to creep in on tiptoe. The seabirds are quiet now. You see them, some perched along the stone, others tucked into low hollows, their bodies folded like sails between journeys. They aren't sleeping. Their eyes are open, fixed on the clouds, not watching, listening. And then you hear it. Soft, low, repetitive. A kind of humming. But it's not from the sky. It's from the ground again. A dull thrum, not seismic this time, more like a lullaby, one that seems to rise from the stone and slip up through your feet, into your knees, into your ribs. The birds sway slightly, not in rhythm, in memory. It's like the storm left behind a song only they can hear. And their bodies remember. Fact check. Recent studies on bird embryos have shown that chicks can respond to environmental cues, such as heat pressure or vibration, even before hatching. In some seabird species, eggs vibrate when storms approach. This could mean that some birds are born already knowing how to respond to the world's chaos. You watch one of the smaller birds, a fledgling, really tucked into the curve of a larger one's wing. Its head rises slowly, beak pointing skyward. Then very gently it begins to rock. Forward, back, forward. The larger bird doesn't stop it. Another chick joins in, then another. Soon the outer ring of the flock, mostly the young, begin to sway in slow pulses. Eyes half-lidded, necks dipping like reeds. You almost don't notice the pattern at first, but there it is. The spiral. Not walked, not danced, imprinted. Each chick rocking along a shared inherited beat. Not the grand spirals of the cliff rituals. This one is softer, a spiral in breath, in thought, in lullaby. You close your eyes and listen. It's the rhythm of thunder slowed down, the pace of a distant tide curling back after a crash, the hush of feathers turning just before flight. Odd fact. In some Arctic seabird colonies, fledglings are known to leap off cliffs before they can fully fly, guided only by wind and instinct, sometimes landing miles away. Scientists call it compulsory launching. The birds apparently know they must go before they know how. You open your eyes. The chicks are still swaying. So are some of the adults now, especially the ones closer to the nesting center. Their bodies move less like individuals, more like instruments echoing the same note. There's something deeply strange about it, not ominous, but prehistoric. You imagine this same spiral, this lullaby for thunder's children happening thousands of years ago, on another cliff, in another epoch. Before humans ever thought to dance beside a fire or name a cloud. Maybe this is how the first birds learned flight. Not from muscle, from rhythm. Historians still debate whether birds learned movement by watching others or if it was passed genetically. The idea that rhythm itself, repeated environmental patterns, could shape behavior before instruction remains controversial. But sitting here now, watching an entire flock sway to a song the sky didn't write, you think rhythm might be evolution's handwriting. And you think of the cave. The painted humans imitating this same motion, trying to become part of the spiral, trying to join something they couldn't explain. Maybe it wasn't about survival. Maybe it was about not being left behind. A fledgling tips forward suddenly, its small wings catching an unexpected gust. It flutters, barely holds itself upright, and lets out a single sharp chirp, its first sound. No one reacts, not even the parent, because the sound wasn't for them. It was for itself. A call to confirm what its body already knows: I'm part of this. You place a hand over your chest, and you feel it. The spiral, not on stone, not in wind, but inside. The rhythm you've been watching this entire time wasn't a performance. It was an invitation. It's evening now, or what passes for it when the sky refuses to decide. The light has gone syrupy, smearing everything in a dull orange-gray, as if time itself is melting at the edges. You remain on the cliff, motionless, watching the seabirds return to their quiet spirals, smaller now, slower, like bedtime rituals from a long, long memory. There is no wind, the kind of calm that only comes after the world has screamed itself hoarse. The seabirds don't fly, they don't call. They sway in pairs or in loose lines, shadows against the stone. Some preen, some rest, some simply stand their eyes half closed as if sharing the same dream. You're no longer a witness. You're part of the quiet. The storm never quite hit here, not the way you expected. But the warning, the preparation, the rehearsal, it all still mattered. That's what strikes you hardest now. They dance before the storm not to escape it but to understand it, to predict, to prepare, and when the time came to meet it on their terms. And when that wasn't enough, when their wings weren't fast enough or their spirals weren't tight enough, they flew into it anyway. Because sometimes the only answer to chaos is motion. Fact check. Paleontologists believe that some extinct seabirds adapted their migratory behaviors not just for seasonal food patterns, but in direct response to climate anomalies, shifting ocean currents, temperature spikes, even volcanic ash patterns. Which means that some of them likely flew without hesitation toward danger. You lie down. The stone is cool beneath your back, the hum within it barely perceptible now. Just a soft breath beneath your spine. Above you, the last light cuts across the sky in uneven bands, casting long feathered shadows across the cliffs. One bird glides above, silent, slow, like punctuation at the end of a long, unspoken sentence. You think of all the birds that danced and never came back, the ones whose bones now hum in secret caves, the ones who spiraled inland for reasons no one remembers, the ones who finished someone else's unfinished spiral. And still, the dance continues. Not because anyone is watching, not because it works, but because it has to. Because storms don't care about memory, but sometimes rhythm does. Odd fact. In a study of migratory return rates, certain seabirds were found returning to nesting sites long after those locations became ecologically unsustainable, suggesting that memory, even faulty memory, can be stronger than logic. You sit up. The seabirds are still moving. Not all of them. Just a few. Enough. Their wings make the faintest whispers as they pass, like pages being turned in a book you can't quite read. You wonder how long they've been doing this, if they remember the first spiral, the first step, the first storm, or if memory doesn't matter anymore. Maybe all that matters is that they continue the same way you did, the same way the wind always returns no matter what it ruins. You rise slowly. The sun is almost gone and the sky has begun to fold itself into dark. You take one last look at the cliff. The spiral still glows faintly in the stone, etched by centuries of footfalls and feathers. It won't last forever. One day the sea will swallow this place as it has swallowed so many others. But the birds will dance somewhere else. And someone, something will watch. Maybe not human, maybe not even alive. But they'll understand the rhythm, and they'll know what it means. You turn inland. The necklace of shell and feather presses gently against your chest. You don't walk quickly. You walk like you've practiced this before. Like you've remembered something you didn't know you'd forgotten. Like the storm is waiting and you want to be ready.